Hello, hello, and welcome to Saturday Sound Bites. I'm your host, Veronica V. Sofer. I'm so excited to be here with you today because we talk about all things visibility strategy, communications, public relations, marketing, advertising, branding, networking, all that good stuff that comes together to really promote your brand and get your name out there. Because at the end of the day, your brand is your promise. So we want to make sure that when you are being visible, you are in alignment and completely tied to your strategy so that your messaging is on point. So this is what we like to talk about on Saturday Soundbites. I've got a great guest for you and we're going to bring her on. But before we do, let's take care of some housekeeping. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of Saturday Soundbites. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments and my guest and I will be sure to circle back with you. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring on the amazing Katie Logsdon Krupa joining us, brand photographer. Welcome to Saturday Soundbites.
Hi, how's it going?
Great. I'm so excited about this conversation because images are so important to your brand and they tell a story just as much as words do. So I'm super excited about our conversation today. Katie, before we get started, tell us about how you got started into photography, because I'm always intrigued by how artists really get drawn to this type of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually got started in photography back in high school. I was on my school newspaper, and I was really blessed to go to a high school that we had an amazing school newspaper program. My advisor took us to conferences and what we call competitions, like all over the United States. I got to travel to like Washington, D.C., Arizona, California, and I was able to win awards for my photography. And at that time, I was doing a lot of sports photography, a lot of photojournalistic material, a lot of like news coverage. I remember one of the things I covered was a hugs protest. The students were like mad because teachers were saying that you couldn't like pick each other up and like hug each other and stuff in school, and students were protesting it. So I covered that. And like I said, my teacher was amazing, and he really just like got us into those competitions and into those conferences, and I learned so much from all those experiences. So moving into college, I was also on my college newspaper, and I was the photo editor my sophomore year, and I continued doing photography. And from there, I kind of was like, okay, how can I continue this after college? So about my senior year, I started doing a lot of portrait photography. I had some students who were like, hey, I need a LinkedIn profile photo. I need, I just need some stuff, or I want to take pictures in my graduation and cap and gown. So I started just kind of dabbling in a little bit of everything. My skating coach was getting married, so I shot her wedding. And from there, I just like continued experimenting with different genres of photography. And then in 2018, I live in Canton, Ohio, and I didn't really know a whole lot of people. And at the time, I had a blog. And so I got involved in some blogger events that were in the Cleveland area. And the entrepreneur and blogger like community in Cleveland is huge. There's so many entrepreneurs, and everyone is so creative, and there's just an amazing community of people. So I got involved in that, and I realized that there was really a big need for brand photography, commercial photography, content creators, that kind of thing. So I started working with other bloggers, helping them with their photos for their blogs, and then kind of started working with other entrepreneurs and doing headshots and brand photos for them. And I fell in love with it. I also do marketing full time. So it kind of went hand in hand. I am a huge like advocate for needing a marketing strategy and really putting yourself out there. So brand photography seemed to be like what really grabbed me and kept me going in photography.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love the evolution of learning photography in high school and then really getting to see that grow in college and then in your professional life. So that's very exciting. So give us a little bit of insight for those of us who don't know much about brand photography. What's the difference between like portraits and brand photography? How would you describe that to someone? What's the purpose?
Yeah, so typically what I say is like any photographer can take portraits. You have have like your senior photographers, your wedding photographers, they all do portraits. But what's different about brand photography is that photographer knows marketing and they
Mm.
are able to really strategize and help you take photos that are actually going to serve your business and show what you do. So, what I typically do with my clients is when you decide to book with me and you're like, okay, let's do this, I send you a questionnaire and it is like a long questionnaire and we get really in depth. I want to know what
Oh,
your brand
good.
is, what your messaging is, who you're trying to attract. I mean, we get into the nitty-gritty of everything in your brand because I want to make sure that your photo session reflects who you are and what you do as a brand.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I have like a whole worksheet that my clients fill out. We really get into the strategy portion of it. And I think that's what really makes a difference between portrait photography and brand photography.
Gotcha. I love that. And
Mhm.
you start talking about questionnaires, and what's the objective? What are you looking for as an artist when you ask those real in-depth questions? Because it sounds like it's pretty detailed. It's not just like, hey, what's your favorite color or things like that.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, as we know, branding comes all the way from like your visuals, like your logo, your colors, and that's one of my questions on my questionnaire is what are your brand colors? That way we can
Mm.
incorporate some of those into the staging. Like if we're in a studio space where there's like couches and pillows and all this stuff, I can grab those things that go along with your brand to stage the setting that we're going to shoot in.
Mhm.
But then it also goes all the way down to like, who do you want to talk to? Like, who do you want to see this photo and feel connected to it? Who are you? Who are you speaking to on social media? Who are you speaking to on your website? Because sometimes we might have a different like personality or different strategy on social media than we do on our website. I always ask like, do you have any upcoming like blog topics that you want to get photos for? Do you have any upcoming like holiday promotions or just really any like a program coming up that you are going
Sure.
to start promoting? So we get into the nitty gritty of what you're doing now, where you want to see your business going, what kind of things are you going to be doing in your business that you might need imagery for.
Yeah, that's so strategic. And do you work with like a marketing team, or if someone already has a marketing department, or how do you incorporate that? Because visuals are just one part, and then there's a copywriter, and then there's
Mhm.
usually a strategist or someone who's putting all the pieces together. How do you prefer to work with a group coming in for the first time?
Yeah, so typically, my clients tend to be solopreneurs, so they're a
Okay.
one-person team.
Oh,
In the
gotcha.
past, they might have, yeah. So they typically, it could be a small team, small businesses, but usually they have either worked with somebody in the past, and whether that be like a brand strategist or a brand designer, a web designer. Typically, all of my clients are at that point. Like they've worked with all of
Gotcha.
those people or they're currently working with those people and they say, hey, I need a brand shoot to finalize this like rebrand project that I'm doing. So typically, for example, I worked with another photographer last spring and she was working with a copywriter, working with a brand designer, working with a web designer. And all of us came together and were able to figure out what exactly she needed for her website. So it was
Gotcha.
really awesome to work together as a team and I always tell my clients, hey, like if you haven't done all those things, but like say they're doing a web redesign and they know they need these photos, but they're struggling a little bit on the strategy part, I really like to help them out if I can. But I always encourage them, like, hey, here's who you can talk to if you really need to get in deeper with this. Or like I'm not a logo designer. Here's who you can
Right.
go to for logo design if you need to, figure that out too. So it's always great when you have those things going and we can all work together as a team as solo entrepreneurs. But if you don't have those things, I'm always able to recommend or give my expertise and advice on that moving forward if it's something you need.
Yeah, and it's great. It's always good to have additional collaborators when you're working on a
Mhm.
project. So I think that's great. So, Katie, when people are thinking about brand photography for themselves, you mentioned a couple of things about thinking ahead, blogs, potential new releases, that kind of stuff. What do you
Mhm.
see are some of the I don't know, I wouldn't say fundamental, but what are some of the rookie mistakes that people make when it comes to brand photography? What are some things and you see it and you're like, no, don't do that. That's wrong.
Yeah, so, one thing is not being prepared, and like I said, I do a strategy call, I do a planning call with all of my clients to make sure they are prepared for their shoots, but occasionally I get that client that they don't fill out their forms, so then we
Oh,
get to the planning meeting and we're like, "Okay, what is going on? Things are all over the place, it's not very organized." So I do my best to try to organize them, but I really recommend planning at least like 6 weeks to like a month ahead of time, just so that
mm,
you're not thrown in the week of your brand shoot and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. But then that also goes to finding a brand photographer that is keeping you on track and planning with you, I think is really important. Another thing is people who don't necessarily have like a shot list, and this kind of goes with
oh
planning,
yeah.
but
Mhm.
will create a shot list and people either don't put that many things on it. And so we get to the shoot and we're like, okay, there's like 3 things that you need. Like, what else can we do to fill in our time? Because we have either 90 minutes, 3 hours, whatever they scheduled, or they have so much stuff that they are overwhelmed and they're going all over the place. They're trying to um, do one thing on the list, but then they skip to this, and there's no organization there. So my biggest tip is getting organized and having a plan ahead of time and sticking to that plan during the shoot.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's great. So what do you
Mhm.
say to your clients who are like, I need some branding. I know I need to do some new photos, but I need to lose some weight first. How do you help
Yeah,
coach? Because all of us, whether you're a CEO, solopreneur, mid-level manager, realtor, doctor, you name it, we've all got some imposter syndrome sometimes. And some of us are still
absolutely.
struggling with some COVID weight and things like that. How do you, as a photographer, coach people who say they're just not ready because their body's not where they want it to be?
Yeah, so this is absolutely something I struggle with myself as an entrepreneur. I'm actually having my own brand shoot next month, and I kind of went back and forth that I was like, "Oh, am I really ready for this?" Like, we have that holiday weight. I want to shed a little bit, feel my best self before the shoot. And I kind of went back to what I tell my own clients and just saying, we want you to show up as yourself. That is the ultimate goal, is showing up as yourself and being your most authentic self, because that's who is going, like, that's what's going to attract your clients or customers. They want to see your face, they want to see what you really look like. And if you are either like putting off that shoot because you don't feel comfortable, or you're having a shoot and then you're going in and like face tuning your photos or something, like that doesn't necessarily represent your most authentic self. So
Right.
I always tell people it's hard to tell people to be confident, because I know myself, like when people say stuff to me and they're like, hey, just be confident, like you got this. It doesn't always work. So I just do my best to say, you are beautiful the way you are. Are so talented. You do really amazing things. Let's show the world what you do. And that typically helps get them in the right space, because I really truly believe everyone is a leader and they have the right to be in the space that they're in, and they should be able to show up confidently.
Yeah, agreed. That's fantastic. Katie, do you have any other tips for someone who's looking into branding photos? What should they be looking for in a photographer?
So some of the things they should be looking for in a photographer are specialty. Find a person who specializes in brand photography, commercial photography. They work with businesses. They know what they're doing as far as that goes. Like I said earlier, like you can hire a portrait photographer, a wedding photographer, but you might not get the entire brand experience if you do. Granted, they are very talented photographers, but they might just kind of do the same thing over and over with
Right.
every client. And a lot of the times I always see people who are like just sitting at their desk with their computer. And I'm like, okay, but what else do you do? Let's show them everything else that you do. So I think that's really important, to find somebody who specializes in that specific genre of photography. Also, looking at their portfolio, making sure that their photos and their editing style aligns with your like brand and kind of the vibe you're going for. I see a lot of times where people hire photographers and then they go and put a filter on the photo before posting on Instagram, which I know for myself, I have it in my contract that you can't put filters on your
Oh,
photos
okay.
because
Yeah.
I specifically edit my photos to stand out, and I edit very true to color and very vibrant. So I like, if that's the style you want, then I'm the great photographer for you. There's other photographers who might edit more warm or cool. So you want to find the photographer that edits the way you want them to. And then, oh gosh, let me think of one more. I like had one more and I already lost my train of thought. But I would say, oh, somebody you vibe with. Just
Yeah, for
personality
sure.
wise, like
For
you
sure.
want to be able to vibe with them. A lot of the times, like if you find somebody that you just can't really keep a conversation going with, if you guys don't like, you just aren't on the same wavelength, then your photo shoot's probably not going to be that fun. So find somebody who you have a great connection with and is going to make your photo shoot a blast.
I love it. Those are really great tips. All right,
Yeah.
Katie, how can people connect with you?
Yeah. So my website is katielogsdoncreative.com. So you can find me there on my website. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. It's at Katie Logsdon Creative. And my email is hello@katielogsdoncreative.com. So streamlined, everything is Katie
Yep.
Logsdon Creative.
That's awesome. That's a great way of doing it. And we will make
Yeah.
sure that all those links are in the show notes. So if anyone's listening, they can just go to the show notes and click the link right there. So, Katie, you have been such a great resource. I took several notes. If I looked down, it was because I was trying to write very subtly so that you didn't
Yeah.
notice. But those were all really great tips. And I really appreciate it. And I know our audience is just going to love your content.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm glad I could be here and share this really important information with everyone.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. Guys, that was Katie. Make sure you connect with her. All of her content information is going to be in the show notes. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments. And if you have any questions for Katie specifically, she can connect with you and answer those. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode, reminding you to always hit subscribe when you are downloading the podcast. And again, drop some comments down on Facebook or YouTube so that we can circle back. As always, you can find me at veronicavisofer.com, and I look forward to connecting with you. So we will wrap up this episode by sending you lots of positive energy and light.